Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We're recording live from Broadcast Alley here in Moscone West. I'm your host, Mike Shima, and I'm here with Amitai Ratzon, CEO of Pentera. Welcome, Amitai.
Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you here because we want to talk about automation. I love automation in many ways, and this is about automating security or validating security. That's kind of a unique angle, I think. Tell us a little bit, what are we validating? Why do we need this?
Thank you, and great question. So, in fact, automated security validation is a new concept that was kind of really invented by Pentera 2 years ago, kind of taking us a few steps away, in a good way, from good old pen testing and vulnerability management. And if you try to think what is it we're trying to achieve, look at the typical enterprise, mid-market, large enterprise out there, a retailer, a manufacturing company, a finance company. These guys typically buy tons of stack. They buy tons of nuanced solutions, like AV and EDR and firewall and everything around cloud security and application security. So what does it really mean? They actually buy lots of point solutions, some of the mega solutions, and kind of to protect the castle. But most of these solutions are kind of preventative in nature, and they're there silent till something happens. Now, Pentera, when we go to them, we talk to CISOs and we ask them, so are you comfortable with everything you bought? I mean, do you know that now you're good?
Is it working?
Is it working?
Yeah.
So the answers we get is, we're buying best of breed. We're doing our research. We have great programs. We try to hire the best people. We go to conferences. We try to stay informed. But do we know versus do we just assume we're good? I mean, we don't get good answers there. So Pentera is really here to kind of keep the CISO and the team humble in the moment of truth. We kind of come in, it's an agentless kind of solution without deploying agents that's gone lots of noise and like interfering with IT and with users' operations. We come in and we basically validate that everything you bought and built would survive the moment of truth. And that is using emulated cyber attacks. Pentera is research-driven. We're 250 people, and the platform and the features and modules are all outputs of lots of research that was done over the years. So the platform already has lots of attack techniques and lots of very, I would say, unique and special kind of EDR evasive techniques and others to really show the company that we're challenging how good they are, how good they're performing against the latest attacks. And then we kind of, we see interesting kind of situations because people that think that they really suck, they're actually good. People that just don't know get their score and they say, oh my God, I'm C-. How come? But Deloitte were here 2 weeks ago and they told me I'm A+. So how did you get there exactly? And then we start the conversation. So, and it's the only platform that actually shows our customers how the attacker think. We actually, they said that the attacker thinks in vectors while defender thinks in lists. Right? So we actually showed the vector that goes in the company, how one thing leads to the next. And it's the first time that customers, that are security practitioners, see that in real time. Because before Pentera, that whole pen test magic was done by third parties. They didn't share the process of how they get to stuff, but rather the end report. Now, we open people's eyes and they say, wow, now in real time, like a video game, we actually see the attacker's path inside. And wow, it's an eye-opening. It's the first time we see that.
It is, and my background is many ages ago, I was doing pen testing, manual pen testing, but I sort of got burnt out on that. It gets boring after a while. And I love how you said moment of truth, because this is what the attackers are doing. Tell us a bit more about what it means to experience that moment of truth or be able to see what, that explanation of that attacker's behavior.
Yeah, great question. So I think it all starts with Pentera when our reps are trying to convince the skeptical prospect to give us a chance. Because who wouldn't want that magic button that you click that then tells you how well you're doing against Maze, our
happy
evil.
face or a sad face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't want that button? So we work very hard to convince our prospective customers to go into the POV room, and we've invented this excellent 6-hour POV methodology. So we don't we don't kill you when you prove the concept. It doesn't take 3 to 6 months. You don't need to compose a project team. Our engineers, they come in at 9, they connect, and by 2 p.m. they're out, and that's it. So that experience has to be as provocative as possible in a good way, so that people don't have more questions. And when you say what that moment of truth look like, that could be the moment when Pentera is able, after 2 minutes of enumeration and dynamic exploitation, to create a domain user in the network. And the customers say, but how did you do that? I mean, I had everything in place. Or someone that thought that they've scanned for all the log4shell, and then not only that we identify the log4shell, we also exploit it and progress the attack thanks to that identification exploitation. I mean, that overwhelms people because it's happening in their face, in front of them, in a very visual way, as opposed to a pen testing act that happens in some corridor in floor number 11 out of 25, and the results of which you see 2 weeks after. So it's very real, it's here and now, and we're showing you, hey, do you see that? This means that we just took over this and this and that, and people participate in that moment of truth, and they actually see what we do. They ask questions, we pause, we play, we make it very visual for them.
And I like that because you're describing a long sequence. There's a lot of things that come here, and it gets away from that myth of attackers just have to be right once. It's more of attackers have to have an exploit, but then they have to avoid this detection. They have to avoid this other detection. They have to avoid they have to pivot, but avoid the logging that's going to identify that pivot. And it sounds like what you're showing is this is the sequence that shows actually this tool failed here, or this tool failed here, or you weren't tuned in this manner, and this is the way we can identify real attackers more and more effectively.
Absolutely. I would say one more thing that people are quite surprised by. The pen testing industry have gotten our customers used to what a pen test output looks like. And that is usually the pen testing team comes over, they do what they do, and then the report ends with some major achievements. It usually end with, we have domain admin in clear text password and game over, now we go to the next project. But hey, hold on. Getting domain admin in clear text password is good, but what can you do with that? So exploiting print nightmare on some endpoint is interesting, but maybe it's not that interesting if it doesn't lead to something which is, putting our hands on some, important data points or the Swift server or something. It could be that the vulnerability that we've exploited that was categorized by Tenable, Rapid7, and Qualys as critical, after you exploit it, you say it's not really critical because it leads nowhere.
Here's context.
It leads nowhere. So when we look at Pentera, one of the things we do, we kind of open the eyes of our customers that instead of them looking at 3,000 vulnerabilities that came from one of the typical VM players, and then those are categorized into critical, high, medium, low, the Pentera users, they actually see 11 or 13 vulnerabilities and network misconfigurations, not just CVEs. And those usually represent the root causes for the tunnels that go below ground. And if you just close those root causes, then you don't have to attend to vulnerability number 5, 6, 7, 8, because number one, if LLMNR is disabled, then you can't sniff credentials over SMB.
Right.
So why attend to things that are happening as a result of 2 and 3, 5, 6 if you just shut down the root cause?
And it's such a better conversation to have with your developers, with your administrators, to say, here, please take care of these dozen issues rather than here's your list of 2,000, we'll have an SLA, we'll be back in a month to figure out how many you fixed.
Absolutely, and even the biggest customers that we speak to, the biggest banks, the biggest retailers and asset managers, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the manpower to deal with 2,000-3,000 vulnerabilities.
Nobody should.
And you know what? No one should today.
Absolutely.
The world has changed. This is the era of being more concise, and it's the era of context. So I hope we're adding some of those layers.
Well, now you mentioned like big banks, for example, but big banks, Google's, they have their internal pen test team, their internal red teams. And so do you see, what kind of prevalence do you see of organizations that have that internal work?
Absolutely. So as you might imagine, a company like Pentera, we got our unicorn status December 2021.
Nice.
We're 800 customers across 43 countries. We're big. We work with the biggest banks in the world, but also with 100 employee law firms. So we're applicable to these guys and these guys, right? But you're absolutely right that as you go up market, the biggest companies would usually have some form of a red team internally. And those guys actually, when they see Pentera, they don't know. At the beginning, they're skeptical. They kind of say, oh my God, is this going to replace me? Are you sure that you know everything? Because I've been doing this for 20 years and you're just like technology, right? At the beginning, we get this skepticism. But with time, we become the red teamers' best friends because this saves tons of time from them. So
I
they can
love
focus
that
on
part.
the exotic stuff. So
Yes.
if you're a really good red teamer, trust me, and you've been this guy in the past, I don't need to teach you anything, you don't want to deal with like, the exhaustive stuff or like Nmap scanning and like just mapping and like creating the vulnerability maps and categorizing. You just want to go and like apply your like intuition and your creativity to the lucrative like stuff. And Pentera could look after the 90%, while those very expensive and talented red teamers could look at the 10% that probably only humans could take care of.
Yeah, and you hit it exactly right. It's the creativity that is still important for the humans, but it's that continuous, I imagine. It's just that always ongoing scanning that's going to be helpful, as well as a 100-person law firm probably isn't going to have a fully staffed 3 or 5-person red team.
Absolutely. So I think when we talk about continuation and continuous, we talk about, when we look at big enterprises, you can imagine that if you're, let's say you're a very big bank, let's say you're, without names, like a huge bank out of the United States with daughter companies and subsidiaries in 30 countries. Even if you do have red teams and you do deploy pen testers to do whatever they need to do, there's a certain element of standardization that's missing. Because how do you compare apples to apples? Let's say that you're a US bank that's out of Silicon Valley or out of New York City or Boston or Dallas, and you have your French branch and your Portugal branch and your Brazil branch, and then those guys do their security validation using local pen test companies, and they all tell you, hey, I score A+. But the teachers that gave them the A+ are different teachers. So it's not apples. So you don't know as corporate whether all of your branches, daughter companies, when they say A+, this is the A+ that you refer to. So Pentera helps there a lot. So imagine you're the global CISO, and Pentera runs simultaneously at 25 countries, and by 2 p.m. that CISO sees like the scorecard of all the companies.
Consistency of a baseline.
Yeah, and Pentera couldn't care less whether there is no politics here. We're not a professional services company, so we don't care to show one company that they're C- and these guys are A+. We just see what we see, and we say what we see. And I think that global companies that really care about standardizing the red teaming and kind of enjoying from the continuous nature, but across the world, they really enjoy from what we do.
No, that's amazing. I think, and you already described how relatively easy it is just to do that proof of concept, onboard it. As we wrap up here, is there another way that you would just highlight or point to this new category that you're describing?
Absolutely. So some people kind of try to understand whether when we say automated security validation, we really mean that it's different than just pen testing, or it's just like a nicer words to the same thing. So when you talk about automated security validation, there are some more components that we include. For example, Active Directory password assessments as a matter of like a weekly thing you do. That's not pen testing, but that is part of security validation hygiene that one needs to undertake. Ransomware emulation, so beyond providing the dynamic pen testing across the network inside out, outside in, we also allow a company to launch ransomware attacks against themselves that actually carry the characteristics of the main ransomware variants, that being Maze, REvil, Conti, Lockbit, including the encryption of files and pinging IOCs outside the network. That is not pen testing. That is another layer that people are obsessed with. People really want to get a report showing them how well I'm doing against REvil or Maze, as opposed to how well I'm doing against a generic black box attack. And the last component we've just added is credentials exposure.
Okay.
The industry got used to threat intel being served in a certain way that we are challenging. So if up until Pentera went out with this credentials exposure module, the way a company would have consumed threat intel data is by getting lots of lists of credentials that leaked, and now I need to do something about it. Pentera takes leaked credentials from the outside, and we actually automatically integrate the credential that leaked into the attack that we're propagating inside without getting instruction from anyone. So it's kind of a natural evolution of the attack. So Pentera talks with the outside world, darknet, deep web, and everything we know from the inside to propagate the attack and advance the attack. So that is automated security validation in the holistic sense of things.
And it's amazing, it's a great summary because it's showing this is behavior, how does an org respond to these attackers' behavior, not this particular CVE. That's a wonderful summary. Thank you, Amitai. I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me.
If everyone wants to find out more about Pentera, visit securityweekly.com/Pentera RSAC. Thank you, and stay tuned for more coming up in our live stream.